The U.S. Democratic presidential nominee Barack Obama has chosen the country's ailing economy to show the American public just how different he and the Republican nominee for the presidency are. Obama says the U.S. debt would double under a John McCain presidency. On his first public appearance since former rival Hillary Clinton's endorsement, Obama focused on home mortgage foreclosures, staggering energy costs, and the growing unemployment in the U.S. The Republican candidate for the White House, John McCain, has pledged to continue President George Bush's fiscal policies. The Democrat says McCain has no problem spending hundreds of billions of dollars on tax breaks for big corporations and a permanent occupation of Iraq. Obama has strongly criticized the Bush administration's handling of the economy, calling it the most fiscally irresponsible in history. McCain has brushed off Obama's criticism, instead calling for a town hall debate with the Democrat. The latest Gallup poll has given Obama a 6% lead over McCain among registered voters. I'm now joined by Arun Gupta, editor of the Indepdent in New York. What do you think will be the focus of the American electorate this time around? Will it be terrorism or the economy?
Barack Obama is going to try and make this election about the economy. John McCain is going to try and make it about terrorism. John McCain wants to play to his strength in terms of national security credentials, so they're going to continue to whip up the threat of terrorism, the Iraq War. He's going to try and promote the Iraq War as a success and try and portray Iran as an enemy that must be contained, probably through military action. Barack Obama is going to focus on the economy because that is the most pressing issue at the moment by far and away. The Iraq War has receded from the headlines mainly because U.S. casualties have dropped dramatically, while the tremendous upward spiral in gas and oil prices, the shrinking economy, rising unemployment, the home mortgage bubble, the credit crunch, this just enormous variety of economic blows that are hitting the U.S. and the average American are causing tremendous amount of concern and suffering that is showing itself in terms of being the #1 issue. And so that's what Obama will focus on because that's what voters care about at the moment. And I think absent some sort of dramatic attack on the U.S. or in the Middle East, that will be the issue that dominates through the November poll.
Mr. Gupta, Obama has called Bush's policies as the most fiscally irresponsible in the U.S. history. I suppose you agree with that characterization.
Well, that's quite a statement. There have been many fiscally irresponsible presidents, such as Ronald Reagan, who in the 1980s did a massive military buildup while slashing taxes on corporations and to the wealthy that resulted in massive budget deficits. And if you want to go back to Herbert Hoover's response to the Great Depression, which was to do nothing, which tremendously weakened it. But I would certainly say that George Bush is certainly in the running for some of the worst fiscal policies in U.S. history. He came into office, they did these massive tax cuts to the wealthy, trillions of dollars, cut corporate taxes, and then of course with the Iraq War, this has resulted in two huge deficits, the budget deficit and the U.S. trade deficit. And what we've seen is a tremendous weakening of the U.S. dollar. It's dropped by nearly half in value against the euro. We're seeing the U.S. being supplanted economically by, or not so much supplanted, but we see the growth of a multipolar world as there are rising economic powers like Russia, India, China, and Brazil mainly. And Bush has saddled the U.S. with a tremendous economic burden that I don't think either Barack Obama or John McCain are seriously going to undo. Barack Obama may be more serious about cutting the budget deficit, but the only way he can do that really is by repealing the tax cuts on the wealthy and ending the Iraq War. But he is calling for continued occupation, albeit at lower levels, but his plans still call for 30 to 80,000 U.S. troops to remain in Iraq indefinitely, which would still be a tremendous drain on the U.S. budget.
Now, speaking of the return of U.S. troops from Iraq, do you think that Mr. Obama will make good on his promise about the early return of U.S. troops from Iraq? Or is that just a campaign booster?
I think to a certain degree it is a campaign booster because the one of the aspects of the U.S. political system that's very important to remember is essentially there doesn't tend to be a great difference between the Democratic and Republican establishment. You might find individual Democratic or Republican politicians who think differently, but the real centers of the party tend to agree on foreign policy. So again, both John McCain and Barack Obama agree that the occupation should continue. They just disagree on specifics. Barack Obama went before AIPAC, the American Israeli Political Action Committee, and essentially endorsed military action, or at least the threat of it, against Iran. Barack Obama has continues to support the war in Afghanistan. He's talked about military strikes in Pakistan. He's issued saber rattling against Chavez in Venezuela. He's kowtowing to Cubans in Florida on U.S. policy towards Cuba. So while there are some minor differences, I don't think that there's anything dramatic. And yes, Obama may remove some troops, but he's not going to end the occupation or remove all U.S. military bases
finally,
from Iraq.
Mr. Gupta, and very quickly, if possible,
reinvigorated anti-war movement.
And finally, has there been any progress on the choice of running mates?
There's a lot of talk. I think anything can certainly happen. On Barack Obama's side, I think it is unlikely that he would choose Hillary Clinton because she comes with a tremendous amount of negative baggage. I think you're going to see him more likely choose some southern white male to shore up his credentials among swing voters, maybe John Edwards, maybe former NATO Commander General Wesley Clark. On the Republican side, there's talk that John McCain may pick the current governor of Florida, or he'll probably try and pick some other prominent Republican in a state that he thinks he can win, like Pennsylvania or Michigan.
Right.
The vice presidential choices tend to be tactical, in terms of like securing one significant state or one significant block of the vote.
Arun Gupta, editor of The Independent in New York, thank you for appearing on the show.